water for you if you go thirsty.
Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mike. No, I did not ask you to be a campaign chair because you came in second. Who knows where I'll come in? I'm running this race to win it, but I'm certainly not intimidated by the other candidates. I'm not intimidated by the establishment because the establishment has an agenda. My agenda is to serve. There may be some that will want to create things. There may be some that want to vet things out. I will tell you as we go through just a few minutes. If you spend any time trying to vet me out, if you will do your due diligence and go take a look at me, there's going to be one of two things that are going to happen. Either I'm going to align with your value system, which I believe most in North Georgia I align with, or you're going to take a look at what your concerns are. What are your concerns that are on your heart? And tonight we're going to go over some of those that I feel like I'm the best candidate to be able to address those concerns. So let's start first. I grew up on a farm up in rural Montana, moved here in 1990 after serving in the military and the Army National Guard, and also going to college on a wrestling scholarship. So that wrestling scholarship might tell you a little bit about I'm a fighter. I don't back down. It's not arrogance, as someone would like to report, but I'm passionate about what I believe in. After the military, I got introduced to the South by way of Fort Knox. I started my first business in 1988, an automatic swimming pool cover business. Started by working for a company that was in trouble, sweeping floors, got the opportunity through mentorship. An old Jewish man took me under his wing. Some of you in the room that are seasoned, you might remember the name Savin copiers years and years ago. Well, the guy that owned it was named Paul Charlap. He was one of our customers, and he took me under his wing. And he said, I will teach you business acumen. I will teach you how to buy a business and start it with very little money. It's important, because although some may say he doesn't listen, I do listen. So I started my first business, grew it, sold it, was headed out west, stopped in Georgia, spent the night, loved it, fell in love, stayed here, started another business, went to work at Home Depot in the meantime, moved up through the ranks of Home Depot and Fast Track and so on as I grew my company. Along the way, I added some additional companies. We have a couple ball states, as Gail mentioned. So I have two currently. We'll have a third in Adairsville that will open in December 1. I also have a couple software companies that had some ideas, collaborated with some friends, and we have some software companies as well. So that's the business background. So when people say we need a businessman, I'm somebody that started a business. As I said in a taped recording of the debate that happened on Saturday. So yes, I was not present in the debate yesterday. Had an opportunity to spend some time with some significant fundraisers, and unfortunately was not able to participate. So those that wonder about what I look like on tape or what my issues are, go to bartowpolitics.com and you'll see that we had a debate in Cherokee County, an in-depth debate that covered some of these issues. My point of that is, I didn't grow up privileged. I know what it's like most of you in here, to work hard, to have the American dream, and to be able to seize that dream and do something with it. That also tells you a little bit about me. I'm not a believer in an entitlement society. I believe that along the way, people need help. Help that the churches should have provided. Churches like mine at First Baptist, where I faithfully serve. But the churches have fallen. They have not done what we're supposed to do. So the government got involved. The problem was that we're supposed to help people. Instead, we got them hooked on something, and we grew the government by entitlements. So for the record, if anyone's recording in here, I'm against these entitlements. I'm not against helping people, though. We need to shrink the government. Less government, less taxes, more personal responsibility. If I may, I want to move over into ethics a little bit. You know, our state has taken it on the chin because we're ranked very low in ethics down at the Capitol. Lots of good friends that are down there. They're serving faithfully. And I don't want to go through some of the names and drop names, but there are good men and women that have gone down there to serve our state. But they get down in that cesspool of intertwining of something like Mike was talking about that happens locally, it happens there, and it happens in the federal government. That last year they started trying to pass legislation for ethics reform. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot legislate morality. You cannot legislate ethics. It comes from here. If the bar is here, that's what we get. And for those who want to hear it, It starts in our race. If our candidates can't meet the laws, how in the world do we expect them to go to the Capitol and act accordingly down there? And then when they go from there to the federal government, how do we expect them to act appropriately and represent us as the candidates? I mean, as the constituents. So they need to raise the bar on ethics. And I don't have a problem with that. If anybody wants to challenge me on that, I don't have a problem with that. Because where I grew up, you obey the law. If you don't, you take personal responsibility for it, and you're held accountable. So I don't know which candidates will be in place. We're a free country. Each one of us can run. Where are you at, Gail? Dean did resign on Saturday. He publicly resigned and said that he did not want to split the conservative vote. Ladies and gentlemen, if you take some time to look at me, you'll see I am the conservative vote. I don't have baggage. I don't have an agenda. Well, let me back up. Everybody has an agenda. That wouldn't be true. Every one of us have an agenda. I don't need the $17,000 to get paid to go down there. Unlike one of my opponents that stated publicly on one of the tapes, legislators do not make more than teachers. Legislators make $17,000, as long as that's all they're doing. I'm doing this because I have a 13-year-old that I adopted as a newborn, and an 8-year-old that I adopted as well, my wife and I. Newborn. By the way, I'm the only candidate that I know of right now pro-life movement's endorsed. Why? Because ethics matters. Matters to me. But I look at them, and if we're not careful, guys, these young people here, the American dream is going to be gone. So it's time to stand up and say, you know what, this is our country. This is our community. This is our district. It's not a Cherokee candidate. It's not a Bartow candidate. It's not a Cobb County candidate. Sometimes you hear that. It's like, well, we want a Cherokee candidate, or we want a Bartow candidate. No, you don't. If you think long and hard, you want a conservative candidate that's going to represent your values. Your values where someone will go down there and they'll do the things that I've talked about. I'm described as a businessman that cares. See, we need to be cooperative when we get down there. I did not say compromise principles. Compromise has become a bad word because people compromise their principles. But you got to reach across the aisle. If John wants to build a road there, and I want to build a road here, and you expect a road to be built, and we decide we're not doing anything, how do we get anything done? C, cooperation. A, we need to be held accountable. You need to hold your politicians or your political servants accountable. We need to be held accountable in our district. And by glory, when we get down there, we need to hold each other accountable. R, we need to be respectful, responsible, and a good example of statesmen when we're down there serving. We don't need to embarrass our state with other states because we're ranked 48th or 49th or 50th in our ethics and morality. That should just appall you as much as it does me. The last thing is, when you do get elected, you need to be engaged back here. Because we're hired to do a job by the people from here. We have forgotten that. In my companies, if I hire you to do a job and you don't do it, I might bring you in and say, well, one of three things have happened. I either didn't explain what I expect you to do, I haven't equipped you with the tools, or you refuse to do it because you're just not capable or you don't have the right attitude. Could you help me with which one of those that is? And if they refuse to do it, you terminate them. So then people say, well, but they have a term. Well, that's great. In the business world, it's called a contract. And you mark on the calendar when that contract's coming up, and when that date comes up, you terminate them. They need to be engaged back here in our community as well as engaged down there. Not deciding they won't show up for a vote because they don't agree. You know, it's not what I agree with, it's what the constituents want. I'm there as a representative. And you do it in an ethical way. It's an embarrassment to our state. It's an embarrassment to our district when we have the distraction that's going on in a very important race. For goodness sakes, we had 3 people out of your 6 candidates that had to go stand in front of a judge. If that's how we start a race, Really? And we're still waiting for a hearing. And I don't have a problem with saying that, because I may not be your candidate. And at the end of the day, I'm okay with that. Because on November 5th, we'll wake up and we'll say, so-and-so is your new senator unless there's a runoff, and I have plenty to do here in the community. So my agenda is to go down and serve. My reason to do that is my businesses give me the luxury right now to be able to go and serve. The key is, it should be public servant, not politician. And with that, if I may,
I was going to say,
I'll take some questions.
probably take some questions.
I know a few people in here said they have. Fred?
I remember years ago, and I was kind of shocked by this, and I know you've always kind of been engaged in the whole thing, but I remember you wearing a chain all around at one time. Can you kind of tell kind of what's going on with the prostitution, the trafficking of underage girls? And I know with the church and all that, you were instrumental in some of that stuff. And as a senator, can you tell kind of where you would go with that, or is there anything that can be done on that end to?
It is, again, I wouldn't stand here and say, here's what I would change when I get to be a senator, because honestly, I'm not down there to know how it really works. I think anyone that says, I'm going to do this and we're not part of it yet, a little bit arrogant. And Lord knows I've been accused of that because I am a hard charger. But to answer your question, Fred, the reality of it is this Northwest corridor, especially around Kennesaw and so on, has been ranked very high for trafficking. You can't go into too much detail. It has gotten better, but that is, I don't know what to say to that. That we're trapped with, in our Georgia, our sweet Georgia, our sweet Northwest area where we live, my 13-year-old girl, I would have to worry about at some point, her getting sucked into trafficking. The best thing we can do, ladies and gentlemen, is be involved in the lives of our children. It's just like education. Education starts with the family. And I realize that today, with all that's going on, we have split families and we have single parents. I get that. I'm not insensitive to that. But we are still charged with the responsibility of our children. And to be honest with you, when my daughter goes on to college, she's still my child. So Fred, it's a sensitive issue. That it's a big issue. I know one thing I would do. I'm tired of locking up people and putting them in an institution that comes along with free room and board and air conditioning and gyms and TV for that kind of stuff. Frankly, I think there's a special place in you-know-where for people that affect the children and lives of the children.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Before you decided to run for the 14th district, you were a constituent
Yes,
yourself. And what area in the Georgia government would you like to see some changes made?
Well, I think I harped a little bit on the ethics.
Okay.
I think everything starts with ethics. I mentioned someone before. If you can get to know what someone's heart motive is, you can usually see how that they're going to act when they're put into a situation. It's the whole thing of character and integrity. It gets reflected when nobody's around. Ethics is a big one. Most of you know, well, I shouldn't say that. Some of you in the room know me. Economic development is dear to my heart. I am fortunate that I am close to the Lake Point project. Closer than maybe I can even state. I watched it. I stood for them when I was at the chamber and people said it's not going to happen. And I said, you need to believe. And during that time, I became very close to people like Earl Earhart and Neil Freeman, Bob Zucker, Bobby Cox, as you know, who has endorsed us, and stood with them in a gap and said, ladies and gentlemen, just believe. These people are putting millions of dollars in this project that we will benefit from. I don't know if it'll hit 26,000 jobs. Let's just say it hits 20,000 jobs. And although somebody in Cherokee County made a comment saying, we need good jobs, that's not good jobs. You know what, I beg to differ, because if you're unemployed right now, I think a $40,000 job might suit you just well. And if you make $40,000 a year, you've got to pay tax. Well, you should be paying taxes. And you should at some point need a car. And maybe then you move up to a house and pay taxes there. But to those that might oppose Lake Point, let me say this to you. Dr. Andrews is coming there. You know, Dr. Andrews does surgery on the Braves and some of the others. He's put a facility there. I don't think those are $40,000 a year jobs, orthopedic surgeons and so on. Greg Norman's got a 9-hole golf course that's going into that. I don't think the people that are going to play that course are making just $40,000 a year. I get it. We need higher paying jobs. But we need people back to work and off of the unemployment line for lots of reasons. So they can pay taxes, so they can get some self-confidence back in themselves, so we can reduce this, pay the debt down. But economic development. And the last one, which is a big one, which is a byproduct of growth, is transportation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have transportation issues. We've got a 411 that's been in the works forever. We have 20 where I live right now. It's a complete disaster. We have 92 that's a mess. We have 575 where they're appropriated for a hot lane, which is in big battle over in Cherokee County because they do not want that hot lane. Ed Stetzler, my friend, down in Cobb County, has worked on dual lanes being added to 75. He says should come online, started in 14, maybe in 18 or 19 we'll be able to use it. Those are additional capacity lanes. I like that. He says they'll put buses on them. I like that. The challenge I've got, although I get it, we got to fund it, is there's going to be some capacity load tolls. And I just struggle. I struggle with taxing, but we also have to fund things. And we need resources. Yes, ma'am?
What's your stance on homeschooling and Common Core?
Homeschooling is a responsibility and the opportunity of the parent. Who knows better than how to educate the children, the parents? And if you're an educator, I'm sorry, because I well respect the educators. I think the teachers do a great job. I think they work hard with what they've been given. I think there's a lot of mandates that they have to sit and fill out reports and stuff that should be used in the classroom. But I think they struggle. So homeschoolers, there are some homeschoolers in here that do a great job. I'll call you out, kiddo. I think homeschooling is important, and it's an opportunity and a privilege that you should be allowed if that's your choice. Common Core is the biggest mandate that's unfunded, that happens to be an intrusion into our lives from the federal government that I can imagine. And so as I said to someone else in the room before, if, which I don't, I supported it, I would ask this question. So it's standards, right? Whose standards? Your standard, my standard, her standard? Whose standards? And how do we fund that? Well, the Governor Council will put some money in, but we know what happens then. It becomes our responsibility. So now it's something else for us to do. So whose standards? How are we funding it? And then how do we hold them accountable to it? So all we're doing is putting more and more and more layering of responsibility on the taxpayers. For the record, I'm against it. In case you didn't understand.
I got it.
Yes, ma'am? Kim, right?
We got 2 minutes.
Okay.
Hopefully with the military and will be probably more familiar with this and a lot of those like it.
Couldn't hear the question.
Can't hear.
She's getting to it.
How are things within this state or down there in Atlanta in regards to religious liberty and anything, especially within our military? I know as the nation as a whole is getting pretty bad, but do you hear anything in regards to that? Help National Guard, the Guard here in Georgia, or just any incidents like that?
Let me try and restate it so I can understand what you're asking. With my military background, you're asking if the pressures that are coming into the military as far as being able to express and enjoy our religious liberties, if there's any more favor going to that, or if they're continuing to be suppressed. Is that what you're asking?
Right,
Okay. I don't know personally. I do have friends that continue to serve in the military. I can tell you the institution, and you'll know where I stand on Obama right now, is as long as he remains the president, we will continue to lose our liberties. And that is one of the ones that's under attack. I'm not sure about this, so please don't hold me accountable for what the page is, but I think it's page 108 or 110 or something that happens to be within Obamacare. There's a couple of words in there you might want to look up that happen to address the Muslim faith in Obamacare. That in itself should scare the living you-know-what out of you, whether you're Catholic, Lutheran, Methodist, Church of God, Baptist. The fact that we have a president and a portion of Congress that will want to impose something on all of us, but only utilize one religious entity. I think that answers your question. The only way we fix that is I think we remove the president. Anything else? Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any other questions, please, I'll stick around afterwards. It's Bruce Thompson, GA.com. I'm transparent. Thank you.